I never thought parking my own truck on my own driveway would lead to a 6-month war with the most vindictive woman I'd ever met. But that's exactly what happened when I moved to Pinecrest Meadows in Bozeman, Montana. My name is Brett Quinlan, and I'm a 34-year-old independent snow removal contractor. I'd saved up for years to buy my first house, a nice 3-bedroom ranch-style home with a 2-car garage and a long driveway perfect for parking my work vehicles. The neighborhood looked peaceful when I moved in during late August, with neat lawns and friendly waves from a few neighbors. I should have known something was off when the realtor mentioned the HOA 3 times during closing, each time with this weird, nervous laugh. The first week went smoothly. I unpacked boxes, set up my home office, and introduced myself to the neighbors on either side. Tom and Linda Martinez to my left were a retired couple who seemed pleasant enough. To my right lived a young family, the Hendersons, with 2 kids who were always playing basketball in their driveway. Everyone seemed normal. Then I met Brenda. Brenda Whitmore was the HOA president, a title she apparently wore like a crown. She showed up at my door on my 8th day in the neighborhood, clipboard in hand, wearing a cream-colored pantsuit that looked like it cost more than my first truck. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tight it gave me a headache just looking at her, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome to Pinecrest Meadows," she said, that smile frozen on her face. "I'm Brenda Whitmore, president of the Homeowners Association. I wanted to personally deliver your copy of our community guidelines." She thrust a thick binder at me, easily 100 pages. "That's quite a manual," I said, taking it from her. "We maintain high standards here, Mr. Quinlan. I trust you'll familiarize yourself with every rule. We have monthly meetings on the first Tuesday of each month, attendance strongly encouraged." Her eyes drifted past me into my living room, and I could see her cataloging everything visible from the doorway. "I'll do my best to make it when I can," I said. "My work schedule can be pretty unpredictable, especially once winter hits." Her eyes snapped back to me. "What kind of work do you do?" "Snow removal. I run my own business, got about 15 commercial clients, and do residential work too." Something shifted in her expression, just for a second, but I caught it. "I see. Well, I'm sure you'll find our community guidelines very thorough regarding business vehicles and commercial equipment. Section 12, pages 47 through 53. After she left, I actually tried to read through the binder. Most of it was standard HOA stuff about lawn maintenance, exterior paint colors requiring approval, no basketball hoops visible from the street, that kind of thing. But Section 12 made my stomach drop. According to the rules, commercial vehicles over a certain size couldn't be parked in driveways overnight, and definitely not on the street. They had to be kept in garages or off property. The problem was, my primary work truck was a Ford F-350 with a Snowplow attachment. There was no way that thing was fitting in my garage, not with the plow on. And I needed the plow attached and ready to go during winter because when the snow hit, I had to be able to roll out at 3 in the morning to clear parking lots before businesses opened. I called my realtor, Sandra, who confirmed what I'd feared. "The HOA rules were in the disclosure documents," she said apologetically. "I'm sorry, Brett. I know I mentioned the HOA, but I should have been more specific about the vehicle restrictions. So what are my options? You could rent storage space for the truck, or you could park it at a friend's place. Or," she paused, "you could apply for a variance with the HOA board. Sometimes they make exceptions." I decided to try the variance route first. I filled out the paperwork, which required a 10-page application and a $50 non-refundable processing fee. I explained my situation clearly. I was a small business owner. The truck was essential to my livelihood. I needed it accessible for emergency calls, and it would be parked neatly in my driveway, not blocking the sidewalk or street. The denial came back 2 weeks later. No explanation, just a form letter with Brenda's signature stamped at the bottom. September rolled into October, and I started preparing for winter. I had my truck serviced, checked all my equipment, lined up my contracts. The plows stayed off the truck for now since we hadn't had any snow yet. I parked my F-350 in the driveway like I had been, and nobody said anything. Then came the first week of November, and Montana's weather did what it does best. The forecast showed a major storm system moving in, expected to dump 8 to 12 inches overnight. I spent the afternoon of November 6th attaching my plow to the truck, checking the hydraulics, making sure everything was ready. By 6 p.m., the plow was mounted and the truck was parked in my driveway, ready for the 3 a.m. departure I'd need to make. I was eating dinner when my doorbell rang at 7:30. Through the peephole, I saw Brenda, and this time she wasn't alone. She had 2 other people with her, a man and woman I didn't recognize. "Mr. Quinlan," Brenda said when I opened the door. The fake smile was gone. "I'm sure you're aware that you're in violation of HOA Guidelines Section 12, Subsection 4, Paragraph B. "Hi, Brenda. And no, I'm not sure which specific paragraph that is." She made a show of consulting her ever-present clipboard. "Commercial vehicle with attached equipment visible from the street, parked in resident driveway. This is Kenneth Morrison and Julie Chen, board members. We're here to issue you a formal warning." I looked at the 3 of them standing on my porch like some kind of suburban tribunal. "Look, I understand the concern, but I need this truck ready for tomorrow morning. There's a major storm coming and I have to be on the road by 3 a.m. "Your business needs are not the community's concern," Brenda said crisply. "You were denied a variance. The rules apply to everyone equally." "Where exactly am I supposed to park it?" "That's your problem to solve, Mr. Quinlan. You have until 9 p.m. tonight to remove the vehicle from your driveway, or you'll be fined $50 per day until compliance is achieved." Kenneth, the male board member, at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Maybe we could give him until after the storm passes." Brenda's head whipped toward him. "The rules don't have weather exceptions, Kenneth." "It's my property," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "My driveway is on my property." "Your property is part of a planned community with binding covenants you agreed to when you purchased," Brenda shot back. 9 p.m., Mr. Quinlan. They left, and I stood there feeling my blood pressure rise. I called a few friends, but nobody had space for a truck with an 8-foot plow blade on the front. The storage facilities I tried were either full or closed for the evening. By 8:30, I'd run out of options. At 8:55, I walked outside and looked at my truck sitting in my driveway. The snow was already starting to fall, light flakes that would be a full blizzard by midnight. I thought about moving it, I really did, but something in me just refused. This was my house, my driveway, my truck that I needed for my legitimate business. I went back inside and waited. The doorbell rang at 9:15. I looked through the peephole and saw it wasn't Brenda this time. It was 2 Bozeman police officers. My heart hammered as I opened the door. "Officers," the older of the 2, a stocky guy with gray at his temples, spoke first. "Evening, sir. I'm Officer Rodriguez. This is Officer Park. We got a call about a vehicle dispute. Someone called the police because I parked my truck in my driveway." Officer Park, a younger Asian woman, consulted a notebook. The caller reported a commercial vehicle blocking access and violating local ordinances. "That your truck?" She gestured at my F-350. "Yes, madam. That's my work truck. I run a snow removal business." Officer Rodriguez walked over to look at it, his partner following. I stood on my porch, the snow falling harder now, and watched them examine the truck from all angles. They had a brief conversation I couldn't hear, then came back. "Mr. Quinlan, is it?" Rodriguez asked. "Yes, sir." "The truck's fully on your property, not blocking the sidewalk or extending into the street." "That's right, completely in my driveway," he nodded slowly. "And you own this property?" "Yes, sir, bought it in August." Officer Park looked up from her notebook. "Sir, I'm not seeing any city ordinance violation here. It's your property, and the vehicle isn't obstructing any public right-of-way." Relief flooded through me. That's what I tried to tell the HOA. "HOA," Rodriguez repeated, and something in his tone suggested he'd dealt with this kind of thing before. "Let me guess, Brenda Whitmore called this in. You know her?" "Let's just say this isn't our first call to this neighborhood," Officer Park said diplomatically. "Sir, from a legal standpoint, you're not violating any laws. This is a civil matter between you and your homeowners association. We can't enforce HOA rules. So I don't have to move it." "Not on our account," Rodriguez said. "Though I'd recommend reviewing your HOA covenants and maybe consulting with a lawyer if this becomes a bigger issue. HOAs can make life difficult even when they're in the wrong." They left, and I felt vindicated for about 10 minutes. Then headlights swept across my front window, and I saw Brenda's white Mercedes pull up to the curb. She got out, marched up to my door, and pounded on it hard enough to rattle the frame. I opened it to find her face flushed red, eyes blazing. "You called the police on me." "Actually, you called the police on me, Brenda. They told me I'm not breaking any laws." "You're breaking HOA rules, which you are legally bound to follow." The officers said it's a civil matter. "The truck stays." "Then you'll be fined, Mr. Quinlan, $50 per day starting today. And if you don't pay, we'll place a lien on your property." She stormed off before I could respond, tires squealing as she drove away. I went back inside and did what Officer Rodriguez had suggested. I called a lawyer. The lawyer's name was David Hernandez, and I got him on the phone the next morning after I'd finished my snow removal rounds. The storm had dumped 10 inches, and I'd been working since 3 a.m. I was exhausted but needed answers. "HOA disputes are tricky," David said after I'd explained the situation. "Yes, you agreed to the covenants when you bought the property. But Montana law does provide some protections for homeowners, especially regarding the use of property for legitimate business purposes. The question is whether the HOA's rules are reasonable and whether they're being applied fairly." What does that mean for me right now? It means don't pay any fines yet. Let them pile up while we gather information. I'll send them a letter explaining that we're challenging the rule application as unreasonable restriction on your ability to earn a living. It'll buy us time to see if we can negotiate something or if we need to go to court. How much is this going to cost me? Initial consultation and letter, $500. If it goes further, we'll talk. But Brett, here's my honest advice. Most of these things settle. HOAs don't want the bad publicity or legal fees any more than you do. This Brenda woman sounds like a piece of work, but even she has to answer to the rest of the board and the homeowners. I agreed to hire him and felt a bit better having a professional on my side. The snow kept falling through November, and I kept parking my truck in my driveway every time a storm was forecast. Each time, I'd get a violation notice in my mailbox the next day. The fines theoretically added up, $50 per day, times roughly 15 days over the course of the month. December brought more snow and more conflict. Brenda started driving past my house multiple times a day, slowing down to glare at my truck. She'd take pictures with her phone, document everything. Other neighbors began to notice. Tom Martinez caught me shoveling my walk one Saturday morning. "Hey, Brett, I just want you to know that not everyone agrees with what Brenda's doing. That truck isn't hurting anybody." "Thanks, Tom. I appreciate that. She's been president for 6 years now, and every year she gets a little more power-hungry. Last year she tried to fine the Johnsons 3 streets over because their Christmas lights weren't white. Can you believe that? She said colored lights were garish." "Why does everyone keep electing her?" Tom snorted. "Most people don't come to the meetings." "It's just Brenda and her friends voting for each other. The rest of us didn't realize what we were getting into." That conversation gave me an idea. If most homeowners didn't like how Brenda ran things, maybe I could rally support. But I quickly realized I had a problem. I was the new guy, and I was busy. Between work and dealing with the HOA nonsense, I barely had time to sleep, let alone organize some kind of neighborhood resistance movement. David sent his letter to the HOA in mid-December. It was a beautifully crafted piece of legal writing that basically said the HOA's rule was an unreasonable restriction on my property rights and my ability to conduct lawful business, and that we'd see them in court if they tried to enforce the fines. Brenda's response came within 3 days, and it wasn't to my lawyer. It was to me directly. I came home from a job on December 18th to find a letter taped to my front door. Inside was a notice that the HOA board had voted to increase my fine to $100 per day, retroactive to November 6th, and that they were filing a lien against my property for non-payment. The total claimed was $6,300. I called David immediately. "Can they do this?" "They can try," he said grimly. "This is aggressive, even for an HOA dispute. They're trying to force you to either pay up or sell and leave. The retroactive increase is questionable legally. We need to file a response and potentially countersue for harassment." "How much will that cost, realistically?" "Could be $5,000 to $10,000 if it goes to trial, maybe more." I sat down heavily. I'd bought this house with most of my savings. I had my business income, which was good during winter but slower in summer. A prolonged legal battle could break me financially. What if I just park the truck somewhere else? Then you're admitting they were right, and you'll still owe whatever fines they claim are valid. Plus, you'll be parking your essential work equipment somewhere inconvenient, which could hurt your business. Brett, these people are bullies. Sometimes you have to stand up to bullies. He was right, but knowing he was right didn't make me feel better about the situation. Christmas came and went. I spent it working, since snow doesn't take holidays. My parents called from Florida where they'd retired, and I didn't tell them about the HOA situation. No point worrying them. The new year rolled around, and January brought both record snowfall and an escalation in the conflict. Brenda apparently decided that since legal pressure wasn't working fast enough, she'd try social pressure instead. On January 9th, I found a flyer in my mailbox and noticed the same flyer on every mailbox on my street. It had a picture of my truck with the plow attached, parked in my driveway, and text that read, "This property owner is willfully violating our community standards. His refusal to comply with rules that protect all of our property values shows disregard for his neighbors. The HOA board is pursuing all legal remedies, but we need your support. Attend the next board meeting on January 14th to learn more." I stood there in the falling snow, staring at this flyer with my truck and my house clearly visible, and felt something shift inside me. This had gone from annoying to invasive to now actively malicious. She was trying to turn the entire neighborhood against me. My phone rang. It was Linda Martinez, Tom's wife. "Brett, honey, did you see what that woman put in everyone's mailbox?" "Yeah, I'm looking at it now." Tom and I think it's disgusting. She didn't even have the decency to blur out your house number. We're coming to that meeting and we're going to give her a piece of our minds. Over the next few days, I got similar calls from 3 other neighbors. The Hendersons next door, a couple named Gary and Patricia Sullivan from 2 houses down, and a single woman named Rachel Foster who lived across the street. They were all furious on my behalf. "She's made this neighborhood miserable for years," Patricia Sullivan told me when she stopped by with cookies on January 12th. "Last year she tried to fine us because our maple tree drops leaves into our yard in autumn, said it was failure to maintain a tidy appearance. We had to get a lawyer too, and eventually she backed down, but it cost us $2,000 in legal fees. Why hasn't anyone run against her in the board elections?" Patricia shook her head. "She's got Kenneth and Julie in her pocket. They vote as a bloc. And the elections are at the annual meeting in March, which hardly anyone attends because she schedules it at 10 a.m. on a weekday when most people are working. Last year, 12 people showed up out of 147 households. An idea was forming in my mind. What if we could get more people to show up this year? How? I don't know yet, but let me think about it." The board meeting on January 14th was held at the community clubhouse, a small building near the neighborhood entrance. I arrived at 6:30 p.m. to find the parking lot already half full. Apparently, Brenda's inflammatory flyer had worked, just not the way she intended. Inside, about 40 people packed into a room designed for maybe 30. Brenda sat at a folding table at the front with Kenneth and Julie flanking her. Her expression when she saw the crowd was priceless, cycling rapidly from surprise to satisfaction to concern, as she apparently realized not everyone looked friendly to her cause. "Let's call this meeting to order," Brenda said, banging a gavel. She actually had a gavel. "We have a larger turnout than usual, which is wonderful. Civic participation is so important." She went through routine business first, approving minutes from the last meeting, discussing the snow removal contract for common areas, debating whether to repair or replace the neighborhood entrance sign. 20 minutes of bureaucratic tedium that had people shifting restlessly. Finally, she got to what everyone was there for. Now, as many of you are aware, we have an ongoing compliance issue with a property owner who is willfully violating Section 12 of our community guidelines. I raised my hand. "I'm Brett Quinlan, and I'd like to address the board." "This isn't the public comment period yet," Brenda said sharply. "Actually," Tom Martinez said from the back, "Robert's Rules of Order say that an accused party has the right to speak in their own defense." I looked it up. Brenda's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "Fine. Mr. Quinlan, you have 3 minutes." I stood up and turned to face the room rather than the board. "I'm a snow removal contractor. I bought my house in August because I loved the neighborhood and wanted to be part of this community. My work truck is essential to my business. When it snows, I have to be ready to go at a moment's notice, often at 3 or 4 in the morning. I can't park the truck 10 miles away at a storage unit and still do my job effectively." "The rules clearly state," Brenda started. "Let him finish," someone called out. "I applied for a variance in September," I continued. "I was denied without explanation. I've tried to work with the board, but instead of trying to find a compromise, I've been threatened with escalating fines, and now this." I held up the flyer she distributed. "This is my home and my truck on a flyer distributed to everyone in the neighborhood without my permission, basically inviting harassment." "That's not harassment, that's transparency," Brenda snapped. "Is it?" Rachel Foster stood up. "Because it looks like a targeted attack to me. The man parks his work truck in his own driveway. So what? It's a matter of property values," Brenda said. Commercial vehicles are unsightly, and my son has a landscaping business and parks his trailer in his driveway, an older woman I didn't know said. Are you going to come after him next? That's different, Kenneth spoke up. A trailer is, how is it different? Gary Henderson asked. Either we allow people to park work vehicles or we don't. Seems like selective enforcement to me. The meeting devolved into chaos, with multiple people trying to talk at once. Brenda banged her gavel repeatedly, her face getting redder. Julie Chen looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. Kenneth kept trying to speak but getting drowned out. Finally, Patricia Sullivan's voice cut through the noise. I move that we vote on whether to grant Brett Quinlan a variance for his work truck. That's not how this works, Brenda said. The board makes decisions about variances, not the general membership. Actually, Tom said, still in the back with what I now realized was a copy of the HOA bylaws. Article 7, Section 3 says that any board decision can be overridden by a 2/3 vote of members present at a meeting. I move we vote. I second, Linda Martinez called out. Brenda looked trapped. This is highly irregular. We haven't properly noticed this as a voting matter. We're voting on whether to override your decision to deny the variance, Tom said calmly. Your denial was the official board action. We're exercising our right to override. It's in the bylaws. I could see Brenda calculating, trying to find a way out. Finally, she said, fine. All in favor of granting Brett Quinlan a variance to park his commercial vehicle in his driveway. A forest of hands went up. I counted quickly and estimated at least 35 out of the 40 people present. Opposed, 5 hands, including the 3 board members. Motion passes, Tom said. Brett keeps his truck. I expected Brenda to accept defeat gracefully. I should have known better. This vote is procedurally invalid, she declared. I'm refusing to recognize it. The board will discuss this matter further and issue a formal decision. You can't just ignore a vote, Rachel protested. Watch me, Brenda said, gathering her papers. This meeting is adjourned. She walked out, Kenneth and Julie scrambling to follow. The rest of us sat there in stunned silence for a moment before conversations erupted. Tom came over to me. Don't worry, she's bluffing. That vote was legal and I've got it documented. I recorded the whole meeting on my phone. Can she really just ignore it? She can try, but if she does, we can remove her as president. The bylaws allow for a recall vote with a petition signed by 20% of homeowners. That's about 30 signatures. I think we can get that. Over the next week, Tom organized. He went door to door with a petition to recall Brenda as HOA president and hold a special election. I offered to help, but he waved me off. You've got enough on your plate. Let us handle this. By January 22nd, they had 53 signatures, well over the required threshold. Tom submitted the petition to the board, and according to the bylaws, they had to hold a special election within 30 days. Brenda's response was to hire a lawyer of her own. On January 27th, I received a letter from a law firm called Morrison and Associates, informing me that the HOA was proceeding with legal action to enforce the fines and place a lien on my property. The total claimed amount was now up to $9,400. David Hernandez read the letter and laughed, though it wasn't a happy sound. She's desperate. This is all posturing. The vote at the meeting essentially invalidated the fines. They have no legal standing. So I can ignore this. Yes and no. We should file a response, and honestly, I think we should countersue. This has crossed the line into harassment. We can seek damages for the emotional distress, the cost of defending yourself, maybe even go after Brenda personally for the flyer incident. Publishing your address and picture like that could be argued as an invasion of privacy. I don't want to drag this out forever. I know, But sometimes the best defense is a good offense. If we hit back hard, they'll realize you're serious, and it might force a real settlement. We filed a countersuit on February 3rd. It named the HOA, Brenda personally, and the other 2 board members for harassment, abuse of power, and seeking damages of $25,000. I didn't expect to win that much, or anything really. It was about sending a message. The message was received. 2 days after we filed, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Julie Chen. "Mr. Quinlan, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the HOA directory." She sounded nervous. I wanted to apologize for my part in all this. I should have stood up to Brenda earlier. Kenneth and I have decided to resign from the board, effective immediately. "Oh, I appreciate you calling, Julie. The truth is, Brenda can be very intimidating. She's been president for so long that she acts like she owns the neighborhood." When Kenneth and I questioned her decisions, even privately, she'd make our lives miserable. But being named in a lawsuit kind of puts things in perspective. This has gone way too far over a parking spot. After she hung up, I sat there processing this. Without Kenneth and Julie, Brenda was the only board member left. According to the bylaws Tom had been studying obsessively, you needed at least 3 board members to conduct official business. The board was effectively defunct. The special election was scheduled for February 15th at 6 p.m. in the clubhouse. This time, the notice went out to everyone via email, regular mail, and flyers posted at the entrance. The message was simple. Come vote for new HOA leadership. Nominations would be accepted at the meeting. The weather cooperated, giving us a clear, cold Saturday evening. I finished my work rounds early and headed to the clubhouse at 5:30. Cars were already lining the parking lot, and I recognized most of them as neighbors I'd met over the past few months. Inside, the room was set up the same way, but this time Tom was at the front table with Linda, and a man I'd met briefly named Harrison Cho, who apparently was a lawyer himself and had volunteered to moderate the election to keep everything above board. Brenda sat in the front row, ramrod straight, her face expressionless. Morrison from the law firm sat next to her, presumably there to observe. Kenneth and Julie were notably absent. By 6 p.m., 93 people had crammed into that room. I'd never seen that many neighbors in one place. Harrison called the meeting to order and explained the process. They'd accept nominations for president and 2 board member positions, then vote by secret ballot. "I nominate Tom Martinez for president," someone called out immediately. "I second," several voices said at once. Tom stood. "I appreciate that, but I'm not sure I'm the right person. I'm retired and have time to give, but I think we need someone who understands both the legal side and the practical side of running a community." "I nominate Brett Quinlan," Patricia Sullivan said. My head whipped around. "What?" "No, I'm not. You've shown more integrity in 6 months than our previous leadership showed in 6 years, Patricia said firmly. "And you understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of petty tyranny. That's exactly the perspective we need." "I second," Rachel Foster said. Before I could protest further, Harrison said, "Brett Quinlan is nominated. Any other nominations for president?" Silence. Even Brenda didn't nominate herself. Hearing none, Brett Quinlan is elected president by acclamation unless he declines. Everyone was looking at me. I thought about declining. I thought about how much time it would take, how I barely had enough hours in the day as it was. But I also thought about what Patricia had said, and about how many people had stood up for me when they didn't have to. "I accept," I said, "but only if Tom agrees to be vice president and treasurer. I'm going to need a lot of help." Tom grinned. "Deal." The board member positions went to Patricia Sullivan and Gary Henderson, both of whom had been vocal supporters throughout the conflict. The entire election took less than 30 minutes. As people filed out, chatting and looking genuinely happy for the first time I'd seen at an HOA meeting, Brenda approached me. Morrison, the lawyer, hovered behind her like a nervous shadow. "You realize you're completely unqualified for this position," she said coldly. "Probably," I agreed. "But I'm not going to use it to make people's lives miserable, so I've got that going for me. I'll be watching. One mistake, one violation of the bylaws, and I'll have you removed." "Brenda, you've spent the last 6 months making my life hell over a parking spot. I'm not scared of you anymore. But here's what I am going to do. I'm going to run this HOA the way it should have been run all along. Fairly, reasonably, and with respect for the fact that these are people's homes, not your personal fiefdom." Her face went through several shades of red, but she didn't say anything else. She turned and walked out, Morrison scurrying after her. The first official board meeting was held the following Tuesday, February 18th. Just the 4 of us. Me, Tom, Patricia, and Gary. Tom had done a deep dive into the HOA's finances and records over the weekend, and what he found was concerning. "We've got about $40,000 in reserves, which is good," Tom said, spreading papers across the table. "But there are some questionable expenditures over the past few years. Brenda paid herself a stipend as president of $500 a month. Is that normal?" I asked. Patricia shook her head. "Most HOAs are volunteer-run. Some pay property managers, but board members. That's unusual, and I don't see where it was ever approved by the membership." "There's more," Tom continued. "She hired her brother-in-law's landscaping company to maintain the common areas at twice the rate we were paying the previous company. And look at this. Legal fees over the past 3 years total $18,000. That seems excessive for a neighborhood this size." Gary whistled low. "She was using the HOA as her personal piggy bank. We need to do a full audit," I said. "And we need to be very careful about this. If there's actual financial misconduct, we should turn it over to the authorities, not try to handle it ourselves." Tom agreed, and we hired an independent accounting firm to review the books. While we waited for their report, I focused on making immediate changes to how the HOA operated. We set up a simple website where homeowners could submit maintenance requests, see meeting minutes, and review the budget. We established clear guidelines for violations that required warnings and opportunities to correct issues before fines were imposed. And I personally reviewed every active violation case. There were 47 open violations on the books. Most were minor things like grass being half an inch too long or garbage cans visible from the street on non-collection days. I dismissed 32 of them outright as too petty to enforce. The remaining 15 were legitimate issues like a boat that had been abandoned in someone's side yard for months, or a fence falling into disrepair that actually was an eyesore. We contacted those homeowners personally, offered to help them find resources to fix the problems, and extended deadlines. Every single one worked with us to resolve the issues within a month. The audit report came back in mid-March, and it was damning. The accounting firm found nearly $37,000 in questionable expenditures over 3 years, including the unauthorized stipends, inflated landscaping contracts, and legal fees for personal matters that Brenda had charged to the HOA. I called an emergency meeting of the full membership for March 20th. We needed everyone to see this, and we needed to decide how to proceed. The turnout was even bigger than the election, with over 100 homeowners packing the clubhouse and spilling outside. I presented the audit findings, walking through each category of questionable spending. You could feel the anger in the room building. The board recommends that we turn this information over to the Gallatin County Attorney's Office for investigation of possible embezzlement and fraud, I said. But we wanted to get membership input first. This is your money that was misspent. Do it, someone shouted, and a chorus of agreement followed. All in favor of referring this matter to law enforcement. It was unanimous. I filed the report with the county attorney the next day. Tom came with me, and we met with an assistant attorney named Michelle Porter. She reviewed the audit and our documentation, asked questions for over an hour, and finally sat back. "This looks like a solid case for embezzlement," she said. "We'll open an investigation. I have to warn you, these things can take time, but thank you for bringing it to us. HOA fraud is more common than people realize." We left feeling like we'd done the right thing, but I still felt a little sick about it. No matter how badly Brenda had treated me, the idea of her potentially going to jail was sobering. Life started to normalize over the next few weeks. My business was going well. The snow was finally tapering off as spring approached, and the HOA was running smoothly. We had monthly meetings that were well attended and actually productive. People paid their dues because they saw the money being used appropriately. Several homeowners thanked me personally for changing the culture. Brenda went silent. She stopped driving past my house, stopped attending meetings, stopped everything. I almost felt bad for her until I remembered the 6 months of stress she'd put me through. Then came April 14th. I was replacing the blade on my plow, finally taking it off for the season, when 2 Gallatin County Sheriff's deputies pulled up. For a split second, my heart jumped, old instincts from the previous encounters with police. Then I saw Brenda being escorted out of her house in handcuffs 3 doors down. Tom came jogging over from his yard. "Is that what I think it is? Looks like they're arresting her." We watched as they put her in the back of the patrol car. One of the deputies noticed us watching and walked over. "You're Brett Quinlan?" "Yes, sir." "Thought you'd want to know. She's being charged with 3 counts of embezzlement and 2 counts of fraud. The attorney's office said you and Tom Martinez were the ones who brought the case to them. Good work. This kind of thing needs to be stopped." After they left, Tom and I stood there in silence for a moment. "You feel bad?" Tom asked. "A little," I admitted. "But she did this to herself. All she had to do was be reasonable." "All she had to do was treat people with basic respect," Tom corrected. "Instead, she treated the neighborhood like her personal kingdom, and she targeted you specifically for something that wasn't hurting anyone." He was right. This had never been about my truck. It had been about control, about someone who'd let a small amount of power go to their head until they couldn't see straight anymore. The story made the local news that evening. "Former HOA president arrested for embezzlement," ran on 3 stations. The reporter interviewed several homeowners, including Patricia, who gave a blistering account of years of petty tyranny finally catching up with someone. My phone rang constantly for 2 days with interview requests. I turned them all down. This wasn't about revenge or publicity. It was about fixing a broken system and making sure people could live in their homes without harassment. Brenda's trial was scheduled for August, but in late May, her lawyer reached out to Michelle Porter about a plea deal. She agreed to plead guilty to 2 counts of embezzlement in exchange for dropping the fraud charges. She was sentenced to 3 years probation, 6 months of weekends in county jail, and ordered to repay the $37,000 to the HOA. The HOA received a check for the full amount in September, money that Brenda apparently got from selling her house. She moved out of the neighborhood in early October. I heard she relocated to Missoula to live with her sister. As for me, I served as HOA president for 2 full years before passing the role to Patricia. I'd learned that I actually enjoyed the work of helping the community function smoothly, but I also learned that I didn't want to do it forever. 2 years was enough. My business grew. I added 2 more trucks and hired 3 employees, turning my one-man operation into a real company. I still park my primary truck in my driveway during winter, plow attached and ready. Nobody complains. The neighborhood transformed under the new board. We repaved the entrance roads with the money Brenda repaid. We organized community events like summer barbecues and holiday parties. We revised the most onerous rules in the guidelines, focusing on things that actually mattered like property maintenance and safety, rather than petty aesthetic concerns. Tom became my closest friend in Montana. We have dinner with his wife Linda once a week, and he still serves as treasurer, keeping careful watch on every dollar to make sure nobody ever abuses the HOA's finances again. The Hendersons' kids got a little older and started playing basketball in my driveway sometimes because it's got better lighting than theirs. I don't mind. Rachel Foster met a guy named Steve at one of our community barbecues, and they got married last summer. Gary and Patricia Sullivan became the neighborhood's unofficial welcome committee, making sure every new resident feels included from day one. As for Brenda, I heard through the grapevine that she completed her probation and weekends in jail. I hope she learned something from the experience, though I have my doubts. Some people never change, but that's not my problem anymore. The whole experience taught me several things. First, that property rights matter and you should never back down when you're in the right, even when the pressure feels overwhelming. Second, that most people are reasonable and will support you if you give them the chance. Third, that organizations meant to serve communities can become corrupted by small-minded people with oversized egos, but they can also be fixed when enough people care to make it happen. And finally, I learned that sometimes the worst conflicts come from the most ridiculous causes. A parking spot. That's what started all of this. One woman's need for control colliding with one man's need to park his work truck on his own property. It spiraled into months of conflict, legal battles, financial investigations, and criminal charges, all because someone couldn't accept that rules should serve people, not the other way around. I still drive past Brenda's old house sometimes. A nice young couple bought it, both teachers at the local high school. They have a small SUV and a sedan, both of which fit neatly in their garage. No HOA conflicts for them. But if they ever did have an issue, I'd like to think the HOA would handle it better now. We'd talk to them, try to understand their situation, look for reasonable compromises. You know, act like decent human beings. That's really all anyone should expect from their homeowners association. Basic decency, fair enforcement of reasonable rules, and respect for the fact that these are people's homes and lives. It shouldn't be revolutionary, but after everything I went through, I know how rare it actually is. My truck sits in my driveway right now, the plow off for the season but ready to be attached when winter comes back around. It's my property, my driveway, my truck. That should have been the end of the discussion on November 6th when Brenda first knocked on my door. Instead, it became a months-long battle that exposed corruption, changed leadership, and taught a lot of people that they don't have to accept petty tyranny just because it comes with a clipboard and a fake smile. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just backed down that first night, if I'd found somewhere else to park and avoided all the conflict. Would Brenda still be embezzling from the HOA? Would the neighborhood still be suffering under her arbitrary enforcement of petty rules? Would other residents still be getting harassed and fined for nonsense violations? I guess I'll never know for sure, but I don't think I'd change anything if I could go back. Standing up to bullies is never easy, and it often costs more than you expect. But the alternative is worse. The alternative is a world where people like Brenda get away with their behavior because everyone's too tired or scared or busy to fight back. So my truck stays in my driveway, and I sleep well at night knowing I did the right thing. That's worth more than all the stress, legal fees, and drama combined. In the end, it really was just about parking my truck on my own property. But it was also about so much more than that. It was about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And every time I pull out at 3 in the morning to plow snow, driving past dark houses where my neighbors sleep peacefully, I'm reminded why it mattered. This is my home, this is my neighborhood, and these are my people. We took care of a problem together. We fixed something that was broken. We proved that communities can police themselves when good people step up. That's the real story behind the parking spot dispute. Not just one man fighting an HOA Karen, but a whole neighborhood finding its voice and taking back control from someone who'd abused their trust. Brenda called the cops on me for parking my truck in my driveway, and the officer said it was my property. That should have been the end. Instead, it was just the beginning of something much bigger, something that changed this community for the better. I wouldn't recommend anyone seek out this kind of conflict. It was exhausting, expensive, and stressful in ways I'm still processing a year later. But if you find yourself in a similar situation, I would recommend standing your ground if you know you're right. Document everything. Find allies. Don't back down from bullies. And remember that HOA boards are supposed to serve homeowners, not rule over them. My name is Brett Quinlan. I live in Pinecrest Meadows in Bozeman, Montana, and I park my snowplow truck in my driveway. It's my property, and that's all the justification I need. If that bothers someone, well, they're welcome to join the HOA board and try to change things through proper democratic processes. But they better be ready to explain why a work vehicle neatly parked on private property is worth anyone's time or energy. Because at the end of the day, we all just want to live our lives in peace. We want to come home to a place that feels like ours, where we can park our vehicles and plant our gardens and paint our shutters without someone standing over us with a rule book looking for violations. That's not too much to ask. That's just being human. And if protecting that requires standing up to someone with a clipboard and an overdeveloped sense of authority, then that's what we have to do. Not because we want conflict, but because sometimes conflict finds us anyway, and we have to decide whether we're going to roll over or stand up. I chose to stand up, and my neighbors stood with me. Together, we made our community better. And my truck is still parked in my driveway, ready for the next snowfall, exactly where it belongs.